Good evening. I'm Dr. Fred Rouse, the Real Money Doctor, and it's currently Friday, May 1st, and I just want to touch base on today's daily recap of events that affect your ability to get, protect, and enjoy your money, your life, and your retirement. And today I want to talk about the 64,000 burials, and I'll get to that in just a few minutes. For now, the current confirmed cases in the U.S. of COVID reach over 1,091,000 right now. The death rate right now, the deaths are actually over 64,000, 64.3 thousand in just 9 weeks. Okay. We've had basically 159,000 people have actually recovered from the cases, which is not a bad thing, but with the total number of cases at over a million, 159,000 being recovered is not the most thrilling number in the world either. New York State right now has over 308,000 cases, okay, over 23.9 thousand deaths. 18,000 of those, 18.4 actually, are in New York City by itself. New Jersey still has the second highest number of cases at 121,000 cases and just over 7.5 thousand deaths right now. Now, the nice thing is, if there is a nice thing at all, the death rates in both New Jersey and New York have slowed quite a lot. They really have. But the numbers still keep growing every day. Okay? They've slowed on the states, but the middle of the country that thought that they were relatively immune from things, okay, their death rate, their number of cases are starting to pick up right now also. So we'll see what's going to happen with that. Now, each case, each death is a personal tragedy, and it's taking a serious toll on individual families as well as communities where they live. Now, there was Jerry Gibbons. He's 67. He led the country's second largest, busiest execution team for 17 years. That's why he was an executioner. Okay. He presided over 62 executions before becoming a preeminent opponent of the death penalty. He organized protests. He testified before lawmakers and met with incarcerated people, corrections officers, as well as the families of victims. Okay. And then there was April Dunn. She's 33. She was an outspoken disability rights advocate in Louisiana. Okay. And she actually worked for the state government there. She was denied a high school diploma and shut out of jobs because of her disabilities. She, however, helped rewrite the state law to make sure that people like her had equal access to education and employment. And then there was Bishop James N. Flowers, who's 64, or I'm sorry, he's 84. He's a pastor in Maryland, and he was known for his unwavering faith for decades. And before he experienced his religious epiphany and went into religion, okay, he was an up-and-coming rock and roll singer, okay, who really enjoyed the D.C. Nightlife. And in 1961, he defied society at the time by entering into an interracial marriage that lasted for 59 years, the remainder of his life. Now, and there was Margaret Feldman. She was 90. She's a Holocaust survivor. She dedicated her life to teaching children about the atrocities that killed over 6 million Jews. She died one day before the 75th anniversary of her liberation from the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp. These are just a few of the names behind the numbers. These people will be missed. And what this means is that every day we lose more and more of our relatives and friends and co-workers. And today I wanted to mention something else, okay? Something that affects you directly only if you've had a loved one that was taken by COVID. As of today, there's over 64,000 people that have died from COVID. And that's where the majority of us just stop looking unless the situation is really, touch base on your family member directly. Now, it's second nature. It's not a problem. It's just what we do, okay? We hear about the deaths. We hear about, oh, yeah, that's a shame. But unless it was a family member of yours directly, okay, you tend to gloss over it a lot of times. Now, there's a 60% chance or better that if a member of your family got COVID, that it wasn't a sudden illness. It wasn't sudden overnight. The illness may become sudden, and then they got hospitalized for at least a week or more generally before actually dying of COVID. Now, chances are also that You probably weren't with them when they died. You wanted to be. You wanted to say those last few things that you always wanted to say, but just never really did because life got in the way. And then there was this personal situation that weren't really completely settled, and then COVID came, and that would quickly be, their problem. They'd be passing, and you couldn't be allowed at the bedside at that point in time. It really affects a lot of people. Now, on top of all that personal grief, losing a loved one and not being able to be there, on top of the the stay-at-home order and seriously affecting your financial situation, you are now responsible for the burial. And today, that's the reality for over 64,000 people in this country. One funeral home in Brooklyn, New York, there were 50 decomposing bodies found on ice in 4 trucks, including a rental truck from U-Haul. The funeral director said that they were just out of space because they had no more room in his chapel. He said, I ran out of space. The bodies are coming out of my ears. Now, there's a cemetery worker in Brooklyn also. He said he's struggling to stay on top of the bodies. Okay, there's just too many of them. He says they arrived, as early, he gets there at work, sometimes 3 in the morning. And he stays late just to lessen the load for the next day. He's putting in 15-hour days burying people. Now, the people tasked with burying people, they just can't keep up with the sheer numbers of it all. Okay, the deaths are just so many because the virus is just so contagious and so deadly. And many families have not been able to say goodbye to their loved ones in person at the hospital. And they often can't really have traditional funerals or sit shiva or otherwise come together and collectively mourn because of physical distancing rules. And again, we're a very, very social society. We always come together, weddings and funerals. That's what brings the family out. And now people in a family are dying and you can't get together for an actual funeral sometimes. It's just a horrible thing to go through. And then they come up and the costs are just suddenly out of work. Okay, you're busy doing your thing. Okay, you get your stay-at-home order right now. You couldn't visit your loved one in the hospital. Okay, it was a heart-wrenching experience. Sometimes the nurses can get you on a call on their phone, but that's as close as you can get to your loved one. Okay? It's really a big strain. And in New Jersey right now, there were 340 deaths recorded just yesterday. A son couldn't afford to pay the funeral bills for his parents who died 3 days apart in Chicago. The family of a nurse who contracted COVID herself, had to set up a GoFundMe page to cover her funeral expenses. It doesn't have to be like this. There's a really, really simple thing our government can and should be doing right now to help. They could step in and pay for the burials of those who've been taken. But Donald Trump hasn't done it. He hasn't released the money. Now, in the past, after disasters like Hurricane Katrina, the government has stepped in, and they covered the funeral costs even after 3 hurricanes in 2017. FEMA paid out about $2,700 per approved application. So far, we've lost over 64,000 men, women, and actually a few children too to COVID. If the government wanted to provide that same amount of money, that $2,700 to each family that had a deceased person, so they can stop trying to scrounge money on GoFundMe to pay the funeral costs, it would cost the government a whole $173 million. Now that sounds like a lot of money. It really does, until you realize that right now we're spending trillions of dollars with the PPE. $500 billion for big businesses, tens of billions for airline industry bailouts, tens of millions for a luxury hotel company that owns a Ritz-Carlton in Atlanta. The absolute least we can do is to help these families bury their loved ones in the most impacted time, in the most impacted communities of America right now. It's the very least we can do. It's a very basic core measure of our human dignity. And in the richest country in the world, we should be able to allow people to bury their loved ones in dignity. At least we can do this one thing. Just this one thing. Most normal people would think that it's an absolute minimum thing that we can do. But President Trump just won't do it. He doesn't need to go through Congress and ask for additional money. He just needs to authorize FEMA to release the money that they already have. It's that simple. FEMA just does not have the independent ability to go out and initiate these programs at will. It has to come from the president. He's the only one who can actually authorize it. To date, right now, approximately 30 states and territories have requested that specific funding. But Trump refuses to free up the money. Now, the president's refusing to take this simple action as a small step, okay, to help the citizens of this nation in its time of need. It's amazing what's happening right now. It's America, and it's a catastrophe. It's a nightmare. This is a cause for mass grief and national mourning, for flags to be flown at half-mast. But right now, families are victims, and they're watching their federal government fail them. They've suffered through this horrible loss without being able to say goodbye or properly even mourn. And now, amidst the worst economic contraction since the Great Depression, they're being deprived of the money that many of them need right now to give the last bit of dignity to their loved ones. There's no reason for this to be occurring right now. It just shows the president's total uncaring and mean-spirited nature. And what's all that really mean to you? Probably not much, unless you or a family member or a friend are in that particular situation. If you are, it means a lot. How many ugly situations, totally out of your control, do you have to deal with every day? Especially right now, there's an easy fix for this. Mr. President, just sign the money. Just release the money from FEMA. It'll take you less than 20 seconds. Sign a piece of paper. Help the families of over 64,000 people who have died from COVID on your watch. I know I changed the format a bit today, but I felt that this is something I really had to do because it's very impactful for a lot of people. For over 64,000 people that have already died, and for the families and the additional 20 to 40,000 that are likely to die before this is over. Now, I'll post this video on YouTube tomorrow, and please remember to like and share it. Okay. Again, remember, my only goal is to help you get, protect, and enjoy your money, your life, and your retirement. Okay, I appreciate you being here. I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. Thank you.